Don't be afraid to take risks.
It's a good one.
You know, I've made a lot of bad decisions, but nothing that would close the business down or, I always tell my kids if when they're faced with a decision, what's the worst thing that can happen? So it's the same thing in business. You know, when you're considering going into a different market or trying something new, what's the worst that can happen?
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Real Pasadena Podcast. This show is dedicated to sharing the experiences of local business owners and inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs here in Pasadena, Maryland, and beyond. My guest on this episode is Elizabeth Elliott, owner of Himmels Landscape Garden Center. Elizabeth is a Pasadena native, musician, and outdoor enthusiast who was originally an employee at the garden center. The job inspired her to start her own landscaping business, which she ultimately gave up to pursue a more stable career that would support her family. Years later, Elizabeth seized an opportunity to purchase the garden center and has used her corporate experience to shape and grow the culture at Himmels to what it is today. In our interview, Elizabeth shares her approach to finding good people and how listening to her employees has helped create a highly mission and people-focused business. This episode is sponsored by Buxton Media Productions, your one-stop shop for video production, podcasting, and editing services. Whether you're looking to produce a promotional video for your business, create more consistency with your social media content, or even start your own podcast, Buxton Media Productions has everything you need to get started. They even have a local studio right here in Pasadena where we're recording this podcast. To learn more, visit them online at buxtonmediaproductions.com. So tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. Hi, James. My name is Elizabeth Elliott, and I'm the owner of Himmels Landscape Garden Center in Pasadena, Maryland. So we are a retail garden center with a full-service landscaping division, and this past year we've really kind of added hardscaping and focusing on that, but customers can expect to visit our retail garden center right off Mountain Road, and that's what I do. That's my life.
Yeah. When did you get started with Himmel specifically?
Oh my gosh, specifically. So a lot of people know the backstory, which is I worked at Himmels a long time ago when I was young, maybe 19, 20 years old. So gosh, it's been over 20 years now. And I just was looking for a part-time job, something to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I grew up in Pasadena, so I thought it was a natural thing to give it a shot. I love working outdoors. I loved plants already, so I met with Steve Watkins, the former owner, and started my journey at Himmels back then. And it's funny because I didn't know what to expect going into it. I just liked plants, but I really quickly discovered that I loved landscaping and selling even more. Okay. So that was the beginning of Himmel's journey for me.
So that was when you started as an employee?
I was an employee back then.
Okay.
Yes.
And then was there a time between when you were working there and then you worked somewhere else? Or tell me a little bit about the journey and how you decided to enter the world of being a business owner.
It's been really fun. I worked at Himmels for a couple of years. Actually, it was really only a year and a half. And then I decided I wanted to start my own landscaping company.
Okay.
And I did. My justification for that was that, wow, a lot of people come in here and they don't know a lot about plants, but they're running a landscaping business, so I can do that too. So I jumped in, and Steve was my first real mentor. Okay. So he treated me like a big-time landscaper. Gave me discounts. He actually taught me how to build an estimate. He taught me how to do a landscape design and do a sketch and everything. So he really built me up for success right at the very beginning. It took off pretty quickly, and I wasn't quite ready for that. By then I had young children, and I really had to figure out how I was going to support them, support my young family, and do so in a way that felt safe and secure to me. And that didn't feel like safety and security back then.
Being a business
Being
owner.
a business owner. No, it was scary. I didn't know anything about finances. I didn't know anything about hiring. I didn't know anything about the legal side of it.
Sure.
I was kind of faking it, you know? And while I had some great success and great guidance, it was too scary for me back then.
Okay.
So I started looking for a real job. And I landed at Anne Arundel Community College.
Oh, okay.
And there I stayed for 12 years. And
What were you doing at the college?
Oh my gosh, I went through 2 different transitions there. I started in the English as a second language department.
No kidding.
It was really fun because I met people from all over the world. I got to use my Spanish language skills. And gosh, I was really passionate about that department at that time. I thought I might want to teach English as a second language. But then, you know, you get older and your kids start growing up and you need to make more money. And I didn't go to college. And I was fortunate working at the community college to be able to get my associate's degree, which opened up some doors for me. And actually, I was able to kind of grow at the college into a different position in business education partnerships.
Okay.
So that department is the that's the division that transitions high school to community college to four-year university.
Okay.
And I was really fortunate to meet a lot of very interesting, very passionate people in the education field. You know, monthly at meetings, we would talk about how the public school was really trying hard to meet the needs of diverse populations, you know, non-traditional learners mostly, because, you know, I wasn't a college student, and it was just interesting to see how the public school was starting to recognize that college wasn't for everyone, and they were really trying to push the technology or
Trades,
perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. You had a
school.
very unique perspective then of, I mean, kind of what this
Oh, yeah.
podcast is about is that, you know, the path of going to college isn't always the right one, and that
So true.
that being an entrepreneur or business owner, for me, you know, was something that I had to self-discover with my personality, that it was a better fit. But here you are on the front lines,
That's
essentially.
right. That's right.
And then ultimately, you know, not going to college, then I'm curious what maybe led you to decide to get a degree and then ultimately to go into business for yourself.
Well, I knew that I really had an opportunity or passion and energy to do something amazing with my life. I didn't know back then what it was, but I had a feeling that, you know, learning along the way, slowly, at my pace, I'd discover what that was. And then I had a great mentor in my boss at the time, Kathleen Bowerman at the college. She encouraged me. She said, just get your associate's degree. It doesn't have to be in anything specific, but, you know, learn little bits and pieces of things and see where it takes you. And I'm happy I did that. I don't use that for anything currently, but I did learn some skills and, gosh, I met some wonderful people along the way that helped me with my journey. And again, raising a young family, it was always about the resources available to me, and especially money, you know. When you don't have a degree and you're trying to find your way in the world, it can be very intimidating. So I was always looking for the next big thing. And I actually, after 12 great years at the community college, left and started working in the corporate world in nonprofits. And landed this fantastic job at Global Peace Foundation as a fundraiser.
Okay.
And that was really exciting because I traveled all over the world and made some great connections, but always had my eye on wanting to do something for myself. And all those years I stayed friends with, you know, Steve and Dottie at Himmels. And, you know, once in a year we'd kind of touch base. I'd call up and wish them happy holidays or just check in. And I had a feeling that I would circle back around somehow to Himmels. And so I wanted to keep my foot in the door with Steve.
That's interesting. I feel like Pasadena is like a magnet sometimes like that.
That's certainly true.
Brings you back in. So tell me a little bit about some of the challenges that you may have initially faced in getting started. You mentioned when you were younger and first working that money was a big thing. You had a family to take care of.
Yes.
And it just didn't, I guess, have, we have that false sense of security sometimes when we have a paycheck coming in.
That's right.
So other than like money, like tell me that transition then. Now you're going back and you're actually going to take over the ownership of Himmels. What does that look like?
Yeah, it was so funny because I told Steve I'd love to buy Himmels one day without any understanding of what that would require financially or even skill set wise. But I knew I wanted to buy Himmels. And he called me. I happened to be in South Korea at the time, and I looked down at my phone, and sure enough, Steve's on the phone, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is going to happen. So the biggest challenge was just trying to figure out how to raise capital to make the purchase to begin with. And I looked at traditional banks, but without a lot of money already saved up or a strong financial background, it's almost impossible for new business owners to get started. So I was really fortunate to find the Anne Arundel Economic Development Corporation.
Okay.
I applied for a Volt loan, and I was awarded the loan, which enabled me to purchase the business. So that has been amazing, and I've partnered with them since on some educational initiatives, the Inclusive Ventures program I participated in, all things that, the listeners can check out for themselves. But that's been a great resource for me. So through the Anne Arundel Economic Development Corporation, I was able to get the funding I needed and also learn some things about how to, set up a budget. I know the people stuff. Yeah. I know the mission, vision, core value stuff. I brought that from the corporate world, and that's really where the passion is for me in the business. But it was the practical financial things that I needed help with, and I was able to get a lot of help along the way. And I still look for help in that area because that's my biggest challenge.
Let's talk about that a little bit more. I think it's so important. Talk about solopreneurs and things like this, and we have this drive, and but often we find ourselves kind of alone or lacking some of the skill sets, like you said, to accomplish certain things or the knowledge. Right. So tell me a little bit about some of the the connections you made specifically within the community. You mentioned the Anne Arundel County Economic Development.
Sure.
Was there anybody else along the way who really stepped in, or that you seeked out to help you get
Sure.
where you are now?
I've had some really great colleagues who very freely gave me advice on things that they observed from an outsider's perspective.
On things that you were doing?
Things that I was doing. So very candidly, it's easy to have a big ego. Like the business is growing and we're rolling and things are going great. So sure, I'm gonna buy this mowing company and I'm gonna get into mowing and I'm gonna snow plow and I'm gonna do everything. And I had some great colleagues along the way say, hey, stay in your lane, slow down, because you're gonna get in over your head. And I didn't pay attention to that at the time. So there have been moments where I was overwhelmed because I took on way too much. Things that I didn't really have a handle on, I hadn't budgeted for, hadn't planned for, just in keeping with my personality, excited, passionate, can-do, optimistic. That can carry you a long way. But sometimes you can find yourself in hot water if you're not careful. So having colleagues who are in the industry or a similar industry that you can kind of talk very candidly with, I think that's critical in business ownership.
Sure.
A few mentors or just close friends that you can have real discussions with. So I think networking.
So they were mostly colleagues, or how did you find these? I think one of the things, I need a mentor, right?
Yeah.
How do you go about finding a mentor?
I think being vulnerable, being open to sharing your insecurities or your weaknesses, not being afraid to say, hey, I know nothing about money. Can you help me? Or, hey, I'm going to do this amazing thing. What do you think? And then being open to criticism.
Yeah.
We have to all be open to criticism and pay attention, when people who care about us are telling us things that we need to hear. And sometimes our ego gets in the way, and that's been probably my biggest lesson.
Yeah.
Slow down.
What are some of the the biggest lessons that you've learned through this process, other than the ones you mentioned? Is there anything else that comes to mind?
Lots of things. So again, for myself, it's learning to slow down and create a strategy and plan carefully. Again, energy and passion will carry a business to a certain degree, and then you reach a point where you really need to strategize. And that was a tough lesson for me because, again, it's like I love the passion part of it is what drives me. So then having to go back and do the planning part, it takes a little bit of the fun out of things.
Yeah.
But also employee management. I love my employees, and I learned some hard lessons, such as not everyone wants to be a leader. So it's so true, and it's okay, because some people really thrive with a list. And when my skill set is more in the aspirational, big picture things, but I'm not great at training, well, there's a huge deficit there. And, some employees will develop like a low morale or have, a negative feeling about the workplace, which can be surprising when the intentions are so great.
Sure.
So I think hiring people to manage in areas where you're weak. So for myself, turns out I'm great on this level, but when it comes to training and the day-to-day stuff, I'm really lacking. So having a great staff manager has been critical in that. And then, having a great general manager to take on some of the other detail-oriented things that aren't my strength.
Now, how did you go through that hiring process? Because I know that's a very popular topic amongst people who are trying to scale and grow and use leverage and, hire employees. But like you said, different personalities, different skill sets. What did that look like for you in identifying, what maybe your shortcomings might be and to find a person who could fill that, and then perhaps identifying somebody who's very task-driven who can just execute? Like, how did you go through that hiring process? What's up, Pasadena? I'm James Bowerman, your Pasadena Realtor and host of the Real Pasadena Podcast. As a lifelong resident, I've experienced firsthand what makes our town such an amazing place to live, work, and play. As a local real estate agent, having the opportunity to serve so many wonderful people in our community is truly a great honor. If you're thinking about making a move, let me show you how my knowledge and experience can help you achieve your real estate goals. To learn more or to schedule a private consultation, please visit realcreativegroup.com.
We are a mission-focused business. So Himmel's mission is helping our neighbors build a better, healthier, and more beautiful world, which I love.
It's a good one. I remember that one.
Yeah, thank you. And it became very important to me that the employees also kind of, that the mission resonates with them. So that's one hiring point. If that mission really resonates with a potential employee and they can explain why it's important to them or how they are going to manifest that, that is a great first step.
Is that an interview question? Is it where does that fall as far as like just getting them in the door? It's
definitely an interview question, but we put that on all of our hiring. When we go, we use LinkedIn, we use Indeed, and Facebook. Facebook has been a great resource in helping us find our next, great employee. And our mission is always our central focus in our messaging. You've got our great logo, and our mission is right there with it. Yeah. And it's top priority in interviewing. But then it's also because we've had some painful experiences with employees that didn't work out. And so learning from that and making sure that I prepare myself to better understand what the business needs and looking for that specific skill set. So when I know that I need a really high-level manager, for example, I understand that I have to offer great pay, great benefits, work-life balance, and a vibe that will resonate with them, a place where they will want to stay. And then being very clear about what the position looks like, the seasonality. We're closed. We're not closed in the wintertime, but we're really slow.
Yeah.
And our hours are decreased, and there's a lot of thinking work in the winter as opposed to the manual labor and the physical stuff. So finding a person who's okay with that, who can be motivated, that's really important.
Yeah,
and then for the other positions, it's hiring a staff manager who takes all of that on and who has that outsider perspective and can manage those details.
Great. Yeah.
And interestingly, for my crews, every time it's time to hire a new landscaping crew member, because we went from 4 to 40 employees pretty quickly.
Wow.
Yes, so that's 4 landscaping crews, and my charge was, hey, find your next coworker in your community, and that's also been very helpful in trusting staff to kind of search out their next, coworker.
Yeah. Well, I want to bookmark that, but just the scale and the growth, because initially you said, I didn't want to take on more than I could,
right.
handle, right? But also, you purchased a company, an existing company that had been around for many, many years,
That's right?
So how has Himmels changed? How have you changed it? How have you made it your own, and how have you grown it to, over 40 employees? And then what is the future of Himmels? What's the vision there?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm actually, that really excites me a lot, because when I first bought the business, I knew what it was. I had worked there, and it was a landmark in the community. Actually, a lot of people don't know, but my older brother, Rob, worked there also when Steve really started building it up. So, I knew what it was, but coming from the corporate world, and especially the nonprofit world, I realized that having something greater to aspire to, or contributing to the greater good, is important to me and important to a lot of people. So I wanted to bring that corporate world, kind of having a mission, having a vision, core values, to the small business and to the green industry, really. I wanted to be more than just a garden center. So that's one big change. We don't want to be a place where people are just buying plants and buying soil and mulch and all the other things we offer. We want to be a community hub. And I think that was best demonstrated at our recent Cocoa, Crafts, and Carols with Santa event.
Okay,
I envisioned this old-fashioned Christmas where people were gathered around singing carols, and children were running up to Santa Claus and, telling him their wishes and secrets, and just a place where families and friends could gather. And I saw that more than ever at this last event. And that's the focus, right? We want Himmels to be a place where everyone can come and have a safe place to enjoy the outdoors and to gather.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, for so many reasons. And I have noticed, definitely you drive by the sign, you see the events, you see the efforts that you're making. And it's a beautiful place to be.
Thank
anyway,
you.
Because of just all the plants and things. It's I don't know, it's I don't want to say medicinal, but it's almost like it has a healing effect just to be out in nature and surrounded by beauty. And certainly, I think, especially in today's age, it's so important to get people off their devices and out into the real world.
That's so
interacting
true.
with people.
That's our slogan, actually, for the past few years, is get outside. We want to encourage young people to experience the great outdoors, and we want to encourage first-time gardeners to just not be afraid. I look at gardening as a science experiment, You don't know what's going to happen.
Sure.
And what happens in my yard with my plants is different from what happens in your yard with your plants.
I can't grow grass, but
We've talked
get
about
something
that.
growing out of concrete, and it's like this doesn't make any sense to me.
Right. So it's a science experiment, and it should be fun. And we work really hard, the staff especially, because they're so mission focused and they really believe that they're making. That they're doing something great for the community. They love being there and educating the community and, We just had a series of winter work meetings where the staff shared their ideas for 2024.
Ooh.
Oh, it was so exciting to hear these really amazing ideas for how we can transform the space, have more events and classes, and even things in the evening like salsa dancing in the garden.
Huh.
I never would have thought of that, but why not?
Yeah.
So
Well,
we're really
love music too, right?
I do love
Combine the two.
music. Oh my goodness. But we're working really hard to turn Himmels into a community place, a community center, a community hub. And then, when I bought Himmels, the landscaping thing had kind of come and gone with Steve. And I wanted to really build a strong landscaping division. And we're still working hard to perfect that.
Sure.
A lot of that had to do with hiring the right people to do the job. In the beginning, I was doing all the plant ordering, plant pricing, plant merchandising, every customer visit, consultation, setting up every landscape job, and it was true burnout by the end of year 1 and 2. But it was, and that's something I would say for business owners: make sure you build time in for yourself and your family and to rest, because the burnout is real.
Yeah.
I mean,
where do you spend most of your time now? Are you still doing the sales, or are you just behind the scenes? What's your main focus now that you've gotten to where you are?
First 3 years, it was at the garden center 7 days a week. Past 2 years, I've been out on the road, landscape consultations, setting up jobs, talking to customers, and trying to find a place where I can work in peace and quiet and work on the bigger picture things. But I think after a few years of experimenting with both styles, going into 2024, I really will have a 50-50 kind of schedule. I'll be at the garden center more often. I mean, I love being on the tractor. I love being around the chickens.
Dumping mulch. I was going to say, I wanted to make sure we talked about the chickens.
Yes,
and how that came about and what that's like. Because as you know, we have chickens as well. And
totally
I think it's
selfish initiative with that.
Yeah.
Yes, I love chickens. I've always had chickens ever since I was a little girl.
How many chickens do you have now at
Oh
Himmels?
my gosh. The peak, we had 90 birds.
Wow.
Including pigeons, pheasants, quail, and all kinds of chickens. And my staff were like, enough. It's funny, the other day I found a baby ostrich for sale on Facebook, and I sent it to my son, James, and he was like, Mom, don't even think about it.
That's funny.
I love birds, but we have about 40 chickens now.
Okay.
And the staff love tending to them because I'm not there all the time, so I'm fortunate that my staff love them as well.
Yeah.
But it's become a real draw for customers just to see them.
We always go look at them when we stop by.
Oh, it's so much fun. And to watch the children run around and chase the chickens and look at the different varieties.
Yeah.
We have some that are
the little bantams.
6 inches tall. Yes. So it's just it's really just a love of nature. And again, that whole science experiment kind of thing, observing their interactions and just the way they behave. I love it.
Yeah, it's a cool spot. So I do want to ask this question. Going back, if you could give yourself any advice now that you've learned what you know now, or to our audience who's listening or watching, what advice would you give to somebody who's just getting started or considering going into the world of entrepreneurship and starting a business?
I would say don't be afraid to take risks.
It's a good one.
I've made a lot of bad decisions, but nothing that would close the business down or, I always tell my kids if when they're faced with a decision, what's the worst thing that can happen? So it's the same thing in business. When you're considering going into a different market or trying something new, what's the worst that can happen? So take risks. It's important to try new things and to freshen things up. And, especially if your employees have ideas, that's a gift and can be a risk sometimes, so give it a shot. On the other hand, I would say planning is also important. I relied way too much on my intuition and my passion, and I made some financial mistakes that I regret because that could have been money in the bank. instead of just, let's try this thing. So learn the finances. Or not even that. The one thing in the business that you're least comfortable with is the thing that you should focus on the most. So for me, it was the financial part. For others, it could be the social media or whatever. But take that one thing that you're most afraid of and focus on that the most, and it will reward you, I think.
Interesting. All right. That's good advice. So I want to end with a couple fun questions here. If you could have a conversation with anyone, alive or dead, who would it be and what would you talk about?
Oh my gosh, that's a funny question because it has nothing to do with my industry, but I'm in love with Elvis Presley.
Really?
Yes.
Well, you're a musician.
I'm a musician, and I just adore him. I mean, growing up, we listened to Elvis records and Rolling Stones and Beatles, and he was always my mom's favorite, and we watched the movies, and they were so awful. But I just loved him then, and I love him still, so I would love to hear about his life and his approach to music and, all that fun stuff that goes with that.
Very cool.
Yes.
All right. And one last one, since we didn't really touch on books, but I always want to, do you have any book recommendations? Are you a reader? Have you read anything, or would you recommend any book to somebody?
Yes, I read a lot. And, I don't read a lot of business or financial books, although I have a bookshelf full of them. But I like to read for pleasure.
Okay.
And it's because I focus so much of my time and attention on the business and growing the business and social media and this and that when I read, I want it to just be for fun. So I just bought the entire series of the No. 1 Ladies Detective Agency, which is about people in South Africa. And it's really fun and lighthearted and human interest stories. So that's what I enjoy reading.
It's interesting you say that because I also I dove into the world of personal development, self-improvement,
Yes.
Business books, all sorts of things to improve myself.
Sure.
And then somebody gifted me a fiction novel.
Okay.
And I couldn't put it down. And it was just, I forgot what it was like to read something that was just a great story and to visualize it. And
Isn't it
was
true
a good refresher.
That we get so focused on being better and improving ourselves and taking ourselves so seriously sometimes that it's okay to just let our hair down sometimes.
I think it's important.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't own a television, so I don't have that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I don't watch TV.
Yeah.
But
We have one, but I know some people who have one in every room. I feel, I'm not judging, but that's great. I think that's amazing.
it just doesn't add value to my life, but I know for some it is their way of unwinding.
Sure.
So for me, unwinding is either a really lighthearted book or, of course, my band.
Yeah.
So playing music with people I love, and that's a gift. So that's how I unwind.
Well, let's wrap up with the band. Where can people come and
Oh
and
my
watch
gosh,
you play?
Red, Betty, and the Ruckus. We have so much fun, and we're just getting better and better every time we play. We're at the Rumor Reel once a month, all through 2024. We're at Romulo's. We're going to be at the Irish Pub, Severna Park Tap House, the Eastport Democratic Club, all kinds of fun places. So you can find us on Facebook.
Okay.
And I play the guitar, I play congas, I'm the lead singer, and we play good old rock and roll.
Nice.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here today on the podcast.
Thank you, James.
I wish you the best of luck, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Love being here.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Real Pasadena Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Real Pasadena is your local online source where we cover the real news and highlight the real people impacting our community. Be sure to check us out at realpasadenamd.com, where you'll also find all the show notes and additional episodes of the podcast. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, be well, my friends.